company. So we have 3 different products. We have a facial lotion for your face, a body lotion for all sorts of uses, and then we also have a balm, which has our highest amount of CBD oil in it. And that's for like arthritis and the pain you're getting in your knees and your legs and your joints. So it kind of started out interesting. 3 years ago, I started a soap company with my friends, and we'd get together on Sundays and make soap, and you know, it was just mostly a hobby. And our family's members started using it. Everyone started loving it, and that was our first little dalliance with skincare. So after about a few months, you know, we started giving all our soap out to everybody. And me and Rebecca went to our friend's bar, and I took him some soap. And the gentleman next to me started asking me some questions about the oil. So what kind of carrier oils are you using? What's going on? So I started talking. You know, we use avocado oil, coconut oil, castor oil. And as our conversation progressed, we started talking, and he told me that he grows CBD dominant marijuana. And at that time, I didn't really understand what CBD dominant was, and so he started giving me some CBD oil, and we started putting it in soap. And it smelled really good, felt really good, but it was expensive, and it wasn't really a good way to get CBD oil into your body. So what we started doing was we started making lotion with it. And almost instantly, we realized we're onto something. So over the past couple of years, we've been formulating some recipes. It took a while, but I think we're onto something really great. I have samples over there if you guys want to try them out afterwards. And then we have some for you guys to buy too. But that's my history with CBD and marijuana. Mankind's history with marijuana goes back thousands of years. In 2900 BCE, Chinese Emperor Fu Si, I might be saying that wrong, was recorded saying that marijuana was a prevalent medicine in the Chinese Empire, and that it possessed characteristics of both the yin and the yang. Later in the 2nd century, another Chinese man, a surgeon, he created one of the first anesthesias using ground marijuana and wine. Jumping ahead, King James I mandated that every colonist grow 100 hemp plants. Now back then they used hemp for paper and bowstrings and all sorts of paper goods. But for the past 80 years, we've been in the dark about marijuana. Now to understand why we've been in the dark, we have to go back to the 1930s. In the 1930s, there's a couple of things going on. One was hemp was becoming a cheap alternative to lumber. The second thing was the Mexican Revolution led to an influx of Mexican immigrants to the United States. Now, there's a lot of conspiracy theorists out there that think that William Randolph Hearst went and joined up with some of his elite mogul buddies and wanted to outlaw marijuana to protect their lumber investments. Now, I can't speak for William Randolph Hearst or any of his intentions, but what we do know is that William Randolph Hearst misled the American people by using racist rhetoric, fear-mongering, and blatant lies. He said things like, marijuana made Mexican men want to rape white women. He said that marijuana made black men feel like they were as good as white men. And he wrote these in his newspapers. It's almost a little disturbing that that same rhetoric is successful today. After that, prohibition on marijuana started. And for the past 80 years, we've been in the dark. Until 1988, when a scientific lab researcher found what is now known as a CB receptor in the brain of a lab rat. Now, this discovery led to a lot of breakthroughs, and what ended up being the biggest discovery of all. An entirely new system within the human body and all mammalians called the endocannabinoid system. Now that's kind of weird. We're going to get into some science terms right now, so it might get a little confusing, but I'll try and break it down for you best I can. So the endocannabinoid system is defined as neuromodulatory lipids and their receptors. Now, still pretty confusing, right? Well, let's break down the name. Endo means within our body, and cannabinoid comes from the name cannabis, from the plant. So these neuromodulatory lipids are our body's own version of cannabinoids. And these CB receptors are throughout our peripheral nervous system within our bodies. So you see them in your brain, a lot of them in your brain, in your neck, in your arms, in your genitals, in your legs, in your joints, all over the place. Now, the endocannabinoid system regulates and controls things like pain, memory, appetite, immune response, and inflammation, just to name a few. So when we supplement our bodies with cannabinoids from marijuana, things like THC, what happens is a pretty interesting thing. Now, each cannabinoid is pretty different. They're finding more all the time, but two of the most famous are THC and CBD. Now, let's say someone smokes some weed. What happens is you light the dried marijuana, the CBD is burned away, and the smoke is a vessel for the THC cannabinoids to go to your CB receptors throughout your body. Now, what THC does is it overloads those receptors. So it affects your appetite, your vision, your mood, all sorts of different things. On the other hand, CBD, when introduced to the system, does the opposite effect. CBD will find your CB receptors and it will inhibit overload. So, let's say you smoke or you eat an edible and it's too much for you, you're freaking out, you're getting real paranoid, you could take a CBD supplement and you would stop being high. It would regulate your CB receptors. Pretty interesting stuff, right? The main problem we have today with marijuana is it's a Schedule I drug. Therefore, they cannot do any clinical research on it. The studies are small and not very, it's not very scientific. Things like THCV, which is a certain cannabinoid, is believed to reduce appetite. So all these different cannabinoids really have a vast and varying degree of change on our bodies. Now the problem is, with the Schedule I drugs, is that it creates a market for people to manipulate consumers. So if you type into Google right now, CBD oil, you'll find hundreds of listings for CBD oil. That's $20. They'll ship it to your house and they say it has, 500 milligrams of CBD. Now, this is where we get a lot of questions. Why don't you just open up an online store? It's illegal. It is a federal crime to send marijuana products over the mail. What those companies are doing is they're buying hemp seed oil from overseas, which has been legal for a very long time, and they're marketing it as CBD oils. They're saying it's going to cure all your problems. Take this tincture twice a week. You're going to feel like $1 million. I'm not much of a snake oil kind of guy, and I really don't appreciate that sort of marketing. Where they get this oil is from industrial hemp. And it's not even the flower or the plants, it's just the seed. So they get the seed and they use that to make the oil. Actual CBD oil that's grown here or in Oregon or Washington, it comes from the whole plant. They don't just use one specific part. They'll use the buds, they'll use the leaves, and they'll use the stalk, and through an extraction process, get the oil. So that's kind of all the science-y kind of part of it, but let's say you've been interested in marijuana for a while but haven't really wanted to take the steps, or you don't know how to get medical marijuana, or you don't want to talk to your doctor about it. I'm going to tell you how you could get marijuana today, legally, medical marijuana, everything. In 1996, California passed the Compassionate Use Act. Now at the time, the Compassionate Use Act passed with 55% approval rating. The problem was it was wrought with loopholes. They've had to amend this bill many a time. And it's made kind of a complex and bizarre system. They call it the non-profit collective system. Now the way that this works is a doctor cannot prescribe to you marijuana because it's a Schedule I drug. And pharmacies cannot possess marijuana because it's a Schedule I drug. So what they did was they said, you could have a doctor recommend marijuana for you, and then you would have to find a medical marijuana dispensary and get it from there. Which led to a bunch of other questions. Well, can I grow in my state? Is it legal to do this? It's very confusing. In Redondo Beach, you cannot grow marijuana even now that it's legal, because the city council voted against it. So, if you did want to get medical marijuana, you'd have to do a couple of different things. First thing you'd have to do is type into Google, medical marijuana doctors, California, South Bay, and you probably find a bunch of them. You've probably seen billboards for them. Some model in a doctor's uniform with some crazy name, Dr. Green Thumb, some form or another. So you find them, you go and you tell them what's ailing you, what your problem is, and the doctor just wants to get you in and out. I've gone through it a few different times. They get you in there, you tell them your knee hurts, and they say, good, give me $60, get out of here. Once you have your letter of recommendation from a doctor, then you have to find a dispensary. There's an app for that now. It's called Weed Maps. Actually, a couple of local guys created the app. I think they grew up in Torrance. What you do is you type in your address, and it'll show you the closest dispensary near you. After that comes the hard part. You have to figure out what you want once you're in the dispensary. Now, marijuana is classified in a few different ways. The first way is strain. Marijuana has two different types of strain, two major ones. There's indica, which is good for pain, and if you have insomnia, you want to sleep. It's a body high, so it makes you kind of want to just lay on the couch all day. And then there's sativa, which is more energetic. It's more cerebral. It makes you feel stoned. It might lead to paranoia in some people. And then there's hybrid, which I call the best of both worlds. You get the body high and the cerebral high. There's sativa dominant, indica dominant hybrids. The other way it's classified is quality. Now, if you go into a dispensary, you'll notice the bottom shelf usually has what's called shake or blunt mix. And it's pretty much just all the ground up pieces of weed at the bottom of the containers that's left over. It's cheap. It's good if you want to roll joints or blunts and you want to buy something cheap and you don't know what you're getting. Then there's what we refer to as mids or mid shelves. And you know, they have a little bit lower marijuana or THC content. Some people like it. It's a little more mellow, cheaper, potent. Weed is very potent these days. And then there's top shelf, which is kind of like the industry standard. And then after that, there's like private reserve, which is really expensive, and you have to be, you know, it's really, really strong. You gotta be careful. And that's it. You go over there, you pick up your marijuana. You can get marijuana, or you could get topical lotions. We have ours in a couple different dispensaries right now. You could have edibles. They have a marijuana concentrate right now that they've been formulating the past few years. It's called wax. And through an extraction process, they take dried marijuana and they press it through. You know, sometimes they do like a hot press, sometimes they use butane, which isn't so good. But the most accepted way now is probably CO2 extraction, and that's the cleanest way. And what you're left with is a concentrated form of marijuana that's like 90% THC. Very, very strong stuff. So, marijuana today, is a lot different than it was back then. You know, before there was a stigma towards marijuana. Someone that smoked weed was lazy, stinky, hungry, lazy, fat. But now we realize that the more we kind of meet people and the more accepted it's becoming, we're realizing that it's not always that way. For example, I own 2 businesses. I work hard every day. And I've been smoking weed every day for like the past 5 years. The problem is control. I feel like people have this idea that once you start smoking weed, you're gonna wake up and start smoking weed, smoke weed throughout the day. But that's not really the case. In fact, marijuana has made me less lazy because I get more rest at night. I have no problem going to the gym in the morning. With anxiety, pressures of life, it makes you present and appreciate the small things. The reason I first got my doctor's recommendation was because I have asthma. When I was a child, I almost died a couple times from asthma. And ever since I started using marijuana, I haven't used my inhaler. And they say it's because it's an inflammation issue in your air passages, and marijuana reduces inflammation. So I have nothing but good things to say about marijuana. And if you have any other questions,